If you're looking for the best basketball talk in the universe, you just found it. This is Deep Hoops, where fans are the host. Troy Ramel Royal and me, your point guard, Jehudi. We're talking basketball, all basketball, and nothing but basketball. This is Deep Hoops. Well, I am the minister.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Deep Hoops, a show where the fans are passionate about the game that they love, basketball. And we're not experts, but we're fans talking about the NBA. What's going on, Rob?
How you feel?
Man, I'm outstanding, man. I'm feeling good about myself, man. We have one in the can, man. Our first show in the Mid-Atlantic.
Trying to tell you.
I'm trying to tell you, Al D style. I'm trying to tell you. Listen, we've been talking about what we're doing in the Mid-Atlantic with Comcast, and we're so happy that you've become a part of the Deep Hoops family. But we can't forget our other family, the Facebook family, the YouTube family, and the people that are, watching us on Facebook and YouTube. We love you guys, and it's so good to come into your house, your phone, or whatever, every week when we're talking about basketball. Right now, we're doing our prediction show for the playoffs. Now, you say preseason, the game hasn't even started, you're predicting who's in the playoffs? We're that good. We're that good. But we have the top teams, and right now we're going to talk about the East. Next week, we're going to talk about the West, and that's going to make that one show. So we'll have closing comments after we talk about both the East and the West. So, Rob, why don't you give us your top 8 teams in the East?
Well, this is a tough one. And again, for those who've been following this show, they know not only am I a passionate NBA fan, I'm a passionate, long-time, suffering New York Knicks fan. And the fact that the fan in me wants to put New York Knicks as number 8, the NBA fan in me realizes it's not their time yet. But starting at number 8, I have the Miami Heat. Number 7, I believe the Detroit Pistons will be in the playoffs. Number 6, Brooklyn will return in the 6th spot. Number 5 will be Boston. Number 4 will be Toronto Raptors. Number 3 will be Indiana. And number 2 will be Philadelphia. And number 1 will be the Milwaukee Bucks.
Well, I was sitting here looking at your list because we never discussed this beforehand.
No, we have not.
And you would have thought that we discussed it by, there's just a few differences. But I'm a long-time suffering Knicks fan, but I'm not like him. I've abandoned that ship a long time ago. When they come back to relevance, I'll be back on the ship, man. I had to get on another ship, man. I'm trying to tell you.
No bandwagoners allowed.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm not a bandwagon. I'm a lifetime. But I just don't suffer with them, man. I just can't suffer with them, man. Still love them. Still love them. But at number 8, I have the Miami Heat. I think Jimmy Butler's going to make a difference. Yes. At number 7, I have the Detroit Pistons. At number 6, I have the Brooklyn Nets.
Wow.
At number 5, this is where we change, I have the Toronto Raptors. At number 4, I have the Indiana Pacers. At number 3, I have the Boston Celtics. At number 2, I have the Philadelphia 76ers, the Mid-Atlantic team. And at number 1, I, too, have the Milwaukee Bucks. So let's chop it up, let's break it down, and let's talk about why we have it the way we have it. And we do want to hear from you. If you're out there in the Mid-Atlantic, or if you're out there on Facebook, or if you're out there on YouTube, hit us up. Let us know what your top 8 are going to be. But for right now, Ramel and I are going to chop it up. So Rob, why do you have Milwaukee at number 1?
I think that Milwaukee is going to be the team that is going to come back and play their players every game. You're not going to feature no load management or anything like that. I think that they're going to go after the top seed. And so I don't see them slacking off from last year. I think them losing to Toronto is probably what they needed, a little taste of what the playoffs are like. So I look for them to come out and have that number 1 seed, lock up home court throughout the playoffs. But I just don't. I see them being the number 1 seed.
I see them being the number one seed for most of the reasons that you mentioned. I think the Greek Freak is going to be a season better, a season more seasoned. I think the loss of Malcolm Brogdon, if I was going to put Philly at number one, it would have been because of that loss and the addition of from Boston over to Philly, Horford. But I have it that way. I think it should end up that way. I'm waiting to see what this jump shot for Ben Simmons looks like. But seriously, because it can make a difference.
Yeah.
Because if he has a jump shot, that's going to make Embiid's game even easier.
Easier, yes.
It's going to make his game even easier.
Yes.
It's going to make everyone on the court's game even easier. So Ben Simmons having a jump shot makes a difference. I mean, I may have to revisit this list if he comes out there and I'm starting to see him, not a three-point. I don't need him to be Steph Curry.
No.
I just need him to be willing to shoot it and not afraid to shoot it.
What you want to see from him is just forcing defenders to guard him when he pulls up for a jump shot. Whether it's beyond the arc or in front of the arc. You just want to, as a Philly organization and a fan, you want him to be able to draw the defenders in so that maybe it's an easier entry pass into Embiid or even Horford
for that matter. All right, so we both have Milwaukee and Philly number 1 and 2. Where we start to differ is I have Boston at number 3. You have Indiana at number 3 and Toronto at 4. Boston coming in at 5. So our 3, 4, and 5, we have the same teams, just in different order. What is it about Indiana that has you moving them all the way up to number 3? I can understand why Toronto is dropped because they don't have Kawhi Leonard anymore. But you also don't have Boston any higher. Explain your thoughts on Indiana, Toronto, Boston.
Well, Indiana adding Malcolm Brogdon is huge. I can't say enough about that pickup. They did have another acquisition. It'll come to me. But Indiana picking up Malcolm Brogdon, I believe that's going to be huge. And also, they're going to climb by default because I do think the absence or the loss, I should say, of Kawhi Leonard with Toronto and the loss of Horford in Boston drops them. And because of that, I think that Indiana, more or less adding player opposed to losing players, is going to make a difference.
But now, I mean, addition by subtraction plus addition. Subtracting Kawhi could be an addition because it became toxic last year. The chemistry wasn't there last year. But then you add Kemba Walker.
You mean Kyrie?
I'm sorry, Kyrie.
Yes.
Kyrie Irving in Boston. So there's that subtraction, yet an addition, but then you add a player that can do a lot of the things. The numbers are very similar between Kyrie and Kemba Walker, but I think Kemba Walker is a more ingratiating person and more welcoming and not as temperamental as Kyrie.
But to your point, that would be true if they didn't lose Horford. And I think Horford, who is probably the game's best steady Eddie non-superstar player. Horford is just a guy that just goes out there, handles his business, conducts his business, does his business, and he does it without any flaws. And he does it in a professional style where he's like 18-10, and you don't even realize that he's 18-10. And he plays solid defense. He plays defense on the pick and roll. He's a good passer out of the post. That loss is going to be huge for Boston. Yes, I think the Kemba acquisition and the subtraction of Kyrie Irving is actually a plus for Boston.
Mm-hmm.
But if Horford was there, I might have him number 2.
Right.
But the fact that they lost Horford, that
was a big loss. Do you think Enes Kanter brings anything to help them? I mean, he played better defense in the playoffs last year. We know that he's an offensive threat. What do you think about the addition of Enes Kanter?
I actually think Boston fans is going to love Enes Kanter. I'm one of the guys. I got to look at Enes Kanter when he was with the New York Knicks. Enes Kanter's a baller.
I'm trying to tell you.
He's a baller. He's a double-double waiting to happen. You give him the minutes, the confidence, he's going to put up 18 and 12. And here's the thing. Because he puts up 18 and he don't defend, for it to be a minus, whoever he's defending has got to do 20 plus.
Mm-hmm.
How many centers in the league on any given night is giving you 20 plus? Not every team has a center.
Right.
So you may have the advantage with him if you're playing with him, through him, and giving him confidence. I think Boston is going to be very, very, very pleased with Enes Kanter.
And I think, we talked about in our top 25, I don't know if it was in the production meeting or on the show, but Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum, well, no, I know what it was when we were talking about most improved in one of our meetings. But I think Jason Tatum has an opportunity to come and really get his game. And I think Gordon Hayward is another year removed from his injury. And that's going to make him look very good. I think, we're ready for a breakout season from Gordon Hayward.
The problem I see Boston is going to have with their newly assembled roster is simply who is willing to be the sixth man? Who is willing to come off the bench? I don't think with Enes Kanter at your center, you can afford to put out there Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward, Jaylen Brown, and Kemba Walker. I think they need to have a legitimate power forward.
Or power forward. Someone
play
plays some
along
defense.
with, that plays defense, plays along with Enes Kanter, and then you figure out who's your 3 and your 2.
If I don't know what Brad Stevens is going to do, and he knows far more basketball than I do, but I think maybe that could be the place where Gordon Hayward excels.
And I think he's the one that should be the sixth man, but given the confidence that, he's going to play starters minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he's a candidate. I'm not saying he's going to be the one, but I think he's an early candidate for most improved player.
Yeah, that list is pretty long and deep when we talked about that in some of our pre-show meetings. That Gordon Hayward could definitely, and his teammate Jason Tatum can rival for that as well. What about Toronto with the loss of Kawhi? You have slippage, but what did they finish last year? 2, 3?
I want to say they were. I think they were 3.
3. Okay, so you have very little slippage with them this year. I know Siakam is looking good, but why 4? Why in the top 4?
Well, I don't think that Miami, Detroit can elevate past 6. I don't think Brooklyn is going to be any better with Kyrie. Kyrie's got to prove me otherwise. I just think that there's nowhere for Toronto to go but 4. I think that their team is going to thrive off the residual effect of winning the championship. You got 3 players there. Yeah, 3 players there. Gasol, Lowry, and also Ibaka. They're in the final year of their contract. A little up in age. If they're looking for that contract of security, they're going to ball out.
They're going to ball out. Now, I think it's common practice when you talk about Boston, you talk about the addition of Kyrie and Durant. Durant's not going to play this year. But they forget about another addition that is really trying to prove himself in DeAndre Jordan. And I think, you talk about the team hasn't changed much. Yeah, DeAndre Jordan is another piece that is going to complement what's his name, the coach?
Kenny Atkinson.
Atkinson. What he's going to want to do. I agree that I think we both have Brooklyn at 6. So I'm not debating that ranking of 6. But there is an improvement with Kyrie versus DeAndre Russell. That's a great improvement.
Yes, it is a great improvement. But the question is will Kyrie Irving allow players to be players and have the season that they had last year that made Brooklyn so effective, or is he going to come in and kind of take away from what they did last year? And that's what we have to see. And Kyrie Irving, listen, let's not forget, he's one of the best players in the game.
Yes.
He's a top 15 player. I believe last week on our show, I had him as number 13. But he sometimes can get caught up in me, and get away from the team a little bit. And that's the concern, or that's what I'm going to look for when I watch a Brooklyn game.
Jimmy Butler on Miami. And the rookie, and I hate to put any pressure on a rookie, but I think this is a rookie that really is not going to have any pressure, no great expectations. The shooter out of Kentucky, Hero.
Yeah.
Now, we know that Jimmy Butler doesn't like young players, but we also know that Pat Riley runs that organization over there in Spolster. They're not going to put up with any of Jimmy Butler's bullying. I think Jimmy Butler is going to be happy, though, that he is finally the centerpiece. He is finally the man on the team. He has his own team.
And here's the thing. I never was big on Spoelstra. I thought he was a recipient of some top 5 talent. But even though he failed to make the playoffs last year and he made the playoffs the year before, he actually can coach a little bit.
You think?
And I think that he can get the most out of his players. And Jimmy Butler is the star that they needed. D. Wade nearly elevated this team to a playoffs last year. And D. Wade wasn't quite the D. Wade that we've seen of the past. But he still had a little D. Wade left in him. I think Jimmy Butler is still a top 15 player in this league. In fact, I had him as 15 last week on the show. Jimmy Butler might be that guy that just brings Miami into that 8th spot. And if they make a trade, keep an eye on the Bradley Beal situation.
You said that last week, yeah.
I remember I read a report over the summer that Miami said they will take on John Wall's contract to get Bradley Beal. So if that was to take place and you have a Bradley Beal who's a seasoned player, he's not a youngster, as you mentioned moments ago, that Jimmy Butler doesn't like to play with youngsters or he doesn't have too much tolerance. Bradley Beal and Jimmy Butler would be a nice 1-2 combination. It's interesting to see. Miami usually gets their man. We didn't see Butler coming, but he got there. Miami usually gets their man.
And as I sit here and think about Jimmy Butler and what I said about him playing with young players, I'm not going to so much put it on young players. He doesn't like players that don't have a work ethic, that don't work hard. And a lot of times young players just don't know how to work hard.
Right.
But in the Miami organization, everyone works hard.
Yeah.
Okay? So Jimmy Butler is not going to be saddled with a player that is going to be lazy, with the exception of, what's the center saying?
Hassan Whiteside.
Hassan Whiteside.
But he's in Portland now.
Oh, that's right. They got rid of him. So
Yeah,
he won't have anything. So I think we could shake things up. I mean, Jimmy Butler can get them beyond 8. And don't let them add a Bradley Beal.
Yeah, I won't be surprised. And, I'd rather see them get Bradley Beal than Chris Paul.
Mm-hmm.
But they might add Chris Paul instead of Bradley Beal. So
the only reason I say I would rather see them get Bradley Beal, I think Bradley Beal, the way that he plays, he's aggressive on the floor, but he's not confrontational. That would fit well with Jimmy Butler.
I agree.
Now, I know that Jimmy Butler, as the Banana Crew, he's the outside man on the Banana Crew. I don't know if you know that.
He's the bench player.
He's the bench player, right?
He's off the bench.
So maybe he and Chris Paul have a better relationship than we know.
Right, it's possible.
And they can play together. But I think that's too combustible.
Yeah, I'd rather see Bradley Beal.
Yeah.
Even if it meant John Wall a year later.
Even if it meant John Wall a year later. I think Miami is one of those teams that could really surprise people.
I agree.
Because they're always battling for that 8th spot and they don't have anyone. Now with Jimmy Butler and anything else that they add, and I'm telling you, I like that kid Hero.
Yeah. I agree.
For what he's going to be able to do for Miami.
I agree.
Let's just talk about some of the people that are under that 8 in the East that we didn't mention. A team that made it last year, I believe, that we didn't mention, Orlando.
Yeah, unfortunately for Orlando, it was a situation where they just didn't get better.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they didn't get better, and Miami did get better with that the signing of Jimmy Butler, I think they fall back.
Okay.
I think that if Orlando's not careful, a team like Atlanta could start creeping up on them.
Mm-hmm.
I like the direction that Atlanta is going in. I see a similar path and part of the journey that Golden State
went through. Yeah.
So,
and they're run by some of the same people from the Golden State organization.
Right. And they're building the team a little bit slightly similar. Yeah.
They're building it organically. They're, next year, watch, they're going to add, a seasoned veteran. I mean, I know they have Vince Carter, but they're going to add another seasoned veteran that is going to be a major contributor.
Right. And they have to find their Andre Iguodala.
Right.
And, Trae Young, we talked about him. In fact, I believe you had him on your top 25.
I had him on my top 25.
Trae Young, his career has so much resemblance of Steph Curry and Cam Reddish, who I think has a Klay Thompson type future, 6'8", big guard, can defend, perimeter defender, hit the open shot. They're building in the right direction.
They're building in the right direction.
They really are. And Lloyd Pierce, I believe that's his name, the head coach. And it's funny, Lloyd Pierce, Mark Jackson, very similar in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
I like the direction Atlanta go. Unfortunately for my Knicks fans and my Knicks, I think Atlanta's ahead of us. Now, I do think that the Knicks have put together a team that will play some meaningful games late in March. I don't think the Knicks is going to be a team that you just come in and beat. I know they were 17-65 last year, but I see the Knicks winning 30-plus games easily this year.
My biggest problem with the Knicks is they have a lot of the same parts. And it's okay when you have a lot of the same parts. I remember years ago Atlanta trying to do that with when they had Joe and the other kid from Atlanta. I'm terrible with names, as you can see right now. Josh Smith. But, all 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", long reach, can do multiple things on the court. If the Knicks had that, I would give them a shot. But they have a lot of the same pieces. They kind of play the same way. And so there's going to be playing time issues. But one of the pieces that I really like that they picked up is Julius Randle.
Yeah, I think Julius Randle is going to be an all-star this year. I think he's going to represent New York in the Eastern Conference. I believe he'll be voted on by the coaches. Julius Randle, and I didn't see this coming in LA, but Julius Randle is taking step by step each of the way of becoming a better and better player. I mean, he had a tremendous season in New Orleans last year.
He did.
So I look for him to be the leader on the Knicks this year, and which is good because it may take a little pressure off of R.J. Barrett. But I'm going to tell you something. If the Knicks are going to win 30-plus games, have meaningful games in late March, and have a chance, just a chance, whether it's the slightest chance, of becoming a playoff team, it's going to rely on the shoulders of Dennis Smith Jr. and the coaching ability of Fizz. I think Fizz got a pass last year. New York was tanking. But now he's got a coach.
He's got a coach.
And Dennis Smith Jr. has got to play ball.
And I think you're going to see both. I just don't think that you're going to see enough of both to warrant them getting into the playoffs. I think the playoffs are the 8 teams that we've listed with an outside chance from Atlanta, maybe an outside chance from Orlando. I can't think of anyone else in the East that I even give a remote chance.
I think the Knicks will have their third chance.
Right. That's it.
And I think it's a distance.
A great distance.
Yeah.
A great distance.
Now, I do have a question for you because, we talked about Blake Griffin and we talked about Andre Drummond. They added Derrick Rose.
Yes.
Okay. And they also added the MVP of the Big Three in Joe Johnson.
Right.
Now, Joe Johnson has always been a player in this league. He could come off the bench and give them a 1-2 punch, him and Derrick Rose. I think those two acquisitions secures their playoff spot.
Yeah.
And they remain at the number 7 spot. But do you see them having a chance to go higher because of maybe those acquisitions?
Nah. But I shouldn't say it that way because Dwayne Casey is a great coach.
He is.
Okay?
He is.
Coach of the year. Really knows what he's doing.
Absolutely.
And really excels with veterans, and he's got a veteran leading team.
Yes.
So, listen, yes, they could go higher. I don't see them better than Boston. Maybe better than Brooklyn, but maybe. But just as I can see them going higher, I'm telling you right now, I can see Miami going higher. Okay, so we've got some good teams in the East in our top 8.
I think the East will be very competitive.
The East is going to be extremely competitive, and if you notice, it's becoming more and more competitive. And then remember, next year they had Durant.
Right.
So exactly. Yeah. So we're going to see some great things happening in the East. We're going to come back next week. This is going to be continued. We're picking our playoff teams, and we're going to give you an added bonus next week with the people that we think that are going to win the Coach of the Year, the Player of the Year, the MVP, Most Improved Player. We're going to name that next week as well. So we're going to give you the West, our top 8 teams in the West next week. And boy, is that going to be a show.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's going to be some disappointed fans out there because there's a good 11 teams, maybe 12 teams that can compete for a playoff spot out in the West, and 4 of them are not going to make it.
Right. Listen, wait until we have our list compiled, but we have to come back to you next week because we only have 30 minutes, but we give you 30 minutes talking about the game that we love. We're passionate about it, my friends, and we know that if you're watching us right now, you're passionate about it as well. So join us next Wednesday at 11:30 p.m. as we give you our top teams in the West, and we're going to give you the individuals that are going to win the end of the season awards. We're doing it like that, Rob. Aren't we doing it like that?
We're doing it.
Right, we're doing it.
I'm
trying to tell you, Al D style. Listen, once again, we always tell you, we're not experts, but we're passionate fans talking about the game that we love. For the Minister
and Rob,
this is Deep Hoops, and we'll see you next Wednesday at 11:30 p.m.